Over a 6-week period started in March of 2025, 3 South Florida men were robbed of their expensive jewelry after meeting a woman at clubs and bars and bringing her home, identified as 25-year-old Angelina Chenel Esty of Pompano Beach. She allegedly met her first known victim at a Miami club. They went back to the man's apartment in Doral for a nightcap during the early morning hours, and the man quickly fell ill after having a drink. He passed out and awoke to find his Rolex missing. His female visitor was also gone. Further investigation revealed that Esty had left the property in an Uber. She struck again 10 days later after meeting a man at an upscale lounge in Brickell. Accompanied by a friend of Esty's, they went to his home shortly before 5 a.m. The victim later woke up to find his room ransacked of his $11,000 Rolex and $8,000 in cash. Esty left behind her shoes and ID behind, but she managed to target one more unsuspecting victim before finally being arrested. About a month after the second victim was robbed, the man invited Esty to his room at the Fontainebleau, Miami Beach for a drink. He fell asleep after accepting a drink from his visitor and awoke to find his $20,000 Rolex and a $10,000 diamond bracelet missing. By then, Esty was wanted for the 2 previous thefts. Police quickly identified her as the suspect in the 3rd robbery using surveillance footage, and the victim positively identified her as the culprit in a photo lineup. Esty was arrested in late May on grand theft and burglary charges stemming from multiple incidents, and she was nabbed again in September for robbing additional victims after her first arrest. Records show that she pleaded not guilty to her latest batch of charges and currently has 4 open cases. Her bond was revoked following her most recent arrest, and she remains in custody on 6 counts of grand theft, 5 counts of burglary of an occupied dwelling, and other charges. Number 17. Tamika Chesser. In late June, authorities in South Australia announced the discovery of a man's dismembered and burned remains inside a Port Lincoln apartment. His head was missing, but investigators were able to identify him as 39-year-old Julian Story, the living boyfriend of Beauty and the Geek alum Tamika Chesser. The 34-year-old former reality star was found sitting outside in a catatonic and unresponsive state, making her an obvious person of interest in the case. She was taken into custody without incident and has since been charged with Story's murder. A witness told police that he had seen Chesser leaving the apartment shortly before the discovery of Story's body, and that she had told him nothing was wrong despite smoke seeping out of the residence. The following month, Story's head was found by someone's dog. Chesser remains held without bond while awaiting her next court hearing, which is scheduled for mid-December. In the meantime, the authorities have appealed to the public for any information that could be helpful to their investigation. Number 16. Kristen Hogan. In early October, a Connecticut mother was arrested for poisoning her estranged husband amid a contentious child custody battle. 33-year-old Kristen Hogan of Ridgefield is accused of spiking the victim's wine and iced tea with antifreeze, causing him to fall violently ill after ingesting just a small amount of the wine. The unnamed man later told police that he repeatedly woke up sick throughout the night and continued to vomit the following day. His mother came to check on him and immediately took him to the hospital after noticing that he was also slurring and staggering. Doctors determined that the victim had suffered ethylene glycol poisoning and transferred him to the intensive care unit to undergo dialysis for renal failure on the day the man fell ill. Hogan had failed to show up for a scheduled court hearing to address their ongoing divorce and custody matters. During the proceeding, he received an alert that Hogan was at his house and had connected to his Wi-Fi. But this wasn't entirely unusual, as the suspect had unrestricted access to the home. Hogan initially denied poisoning her husband, but a search of her phone turned up incriminating Google searches for various toxic substances, and the tainted wine did in fact test positive for ethylene glycol. She eventually confessed to the crime, claiming that she never meant to kill the victim, but just wanted to get payback on him for being mentally abusive. She was shocked to learn that one of her children had landed in the hospital for similar symptoms and is thought to have ingested some of the poison. The victim suggested otherwise, stating that he believed Hogan wanted to kill him because she would get his house and full custody of their children. Hogan was charged with 2 counts of attempted murder and 1 count of interfering with an officer, and remains jailed on a $1 million bond. Number 15. Nazaray McKinney. In early August, a 27-year-old Florida woman named Nazaray McKinney was arrested in Miami-Dade County for aggravated battery on a law enforcement officer. According to an arrest affidavit, the incident unfolded at a local hospital where an off-duty officer in full uniform was approached for help with a patient who was causing a disturbance. McKinney was reportedly refusing to return to her room and creating a scene near the nurse's station while awaiting test results. The officer repeatedly instructed McKinney to sit in a wheelchair so she could be taken back to her room, but she remained uncooperative. She continued to resist as the officer tried putting her in the wheelchair and bit the cop's finger before being subdued. McKinney was released after posting bail and the case is ongoing. Number 14. Climont Mann. In one of the latest viral Florida man cases to make news headlines, a chaotic brawl between two groups was captured on video inside a Miami Publix supermarket in October. The incident unfolded at around 6 p.m. and began as a verbal altercation which quickly escalated into physical violence. In the footage, two women could be seen clawing at each other and falling to the ground, knocking over a greeting card display. In the process, a shirtless man, later identified as 20-year-old Climont Mann, then picked up a shelf and slammed it against the women. He began to walk away before returning to the scuffle and striking the women several more times with the shelf. Mann then dropped the shelf and immersed himself in the fight while onlookers watched in shock. Dozens of items were strewn about the floor during the fight, including merchandise, a loaf of bread, sandals, and a woman's wig. The fight spilled into the parking lot and continued until police arrived and broke it up. 2 people were hospitalized. Everyone involved was banned from returning to the store, and Mann was charged with felony aggravated battery, criminal mischief, and disorderly conduct. He was booked into jail on a $5,150 bond, but is no longer in custody. Number 13. Alexae Johnson. A Michigan shoplifter may spend decades behind bars after deploying a chemical dispensing device to distract grocery store workers while he stole over $1,000 in merchandise. The incident occurred in September of 2024 at a Maya chain location in Fruitport Township, where 39-year-old Alexae Cameron Johnson released an unknown noxious gas that reeked of chlorine. Emergency responders described seeing a chemical cloud in the center of the store, which was traced to a plastic bottle in the home goods section. The device was spewing swimming pool cleaning agents into the air, causing 4 people to require medical treatment for chemical exposure. The distraction worked, at least initially, enabling Johnson to load his car up with stolen electronics and other top-dollar items, but he was captured after being identified in surveillance footage, which showed him waiting for the chemicals to start dispersing before heading straight toward the store's exit. Johnson was arrested in November of last year and pleaded guilty in October of this year to 2 counts of retail fraud by theft and 1 count each of being a habitual offender and placing an explosive device with intent to alarm. He explained during his sentencing hearing that he was experiencing a mental health crisis at the time of the incident, but the judge made no concessions and imposed a 5 to 50-year prison sentence. Number 12. Timothy Aviles. Panic broke out at a Home Depot store in southwest Miami-Dade, Florida, in early October of this year when a shoplifter told an employee he had an explosive in his backpack. The worker had confronted 37-year-old Timothy Aviles after noticing his suspicious behavior, prompting multiple police units to respond to the scene. No explosives were found during a search of the suspect's bag, and he was arrested for petty theft and making a false bomb threat. Aviles pleaded not guilty and is currently awaiting his arraignment from behind bars at the Turner Guilford Knight Correctional Center, where he's being held on a $7,500 bond. With dozens of prior arrests on record dating at least as far back as 2010, he appears to be no stranger to law enforcement. During the summer of 2025 alone, Aviles was arrested numerous times for drug charges and petty theft. In past years, he faced charges for resisting arrest, burglary, and battery, and he currently has at least 2 open criminal cases in Miami-Dade County. Number 11. Destiny Lenai Johnson. In late 2023, 25-year-old Destiny Lenai Johnson was accused of trying to kill her Tinder date by setting him on fire in the parking lot of a Holiday Inn Express in Miami. The two had met for the first time weeks earlier, and everything had gone smoothly, according to the victim, who said that Johnson called him and asked to meet for a second time about a week later. When he arrived at the hotel at around 5 a.m., Johnson told him she was having car trouble and asked for money. Bothered that the woman had contacted him just for financial help, The man voiced his frustrations but gave Johnson $60 anyway. He later told police that Johnson flew into a rage and poured gasoline into the passenger side of his vehicle before lighting the interior ablaze. The victim caught fire and was luckily able to extinguish the flames by rolling around on the ground. He pointed his gun at Johnson in self-defense, at which point the suspect fled inside and called 911. Johnson was charged with attempted murder, aggravated battery, causing great bodily harm, and arson. She remains held without bond at the Turner Guilford Night Correctional Center, where she allegedly attacked a fellow inmate in the shower in July of 2024. In addition to the charges she was already facing, she was hit with a sexual battery charge for touching the victim inappropriately and without consent. Number 10. Raylean Chastity Gurneau. A Minnesota woman managed to avoid jail time after throwing a puppy out a car window to distract police during a high-speed chase. 27-year-old Raylean Chastity Gurneau was already on probation for a felony animal cruelty conviction for abandoning a beaten, starving, and injured dog when she tossed a pit bull puppy named Tahoe onto the roadside like trash in July of 2023. Tahoe survived the abuse but was euthanized due to behavioral issues that proved unsolvable, most likely stemming from abuse he endured prior to being thrown. Several months after her arrest for the incident, Gurneau pleaded guilty to 1 count each of animal cruelty, overwork, or mistreatment, and placing a fictitious emergency 911 call. Despite her previous conviction, she received a suspended 2-year sentence, along with time served for the 171 days she had spent in county lockup. She was also ordered to serve 3 years of probation and is banned from owning or possessing a pet. Number 9. John DeLee. What began as a verbal confrontation outside a New Hampshire bar took a deadly turn in January of 2023, resulting in the death of 24-year-old Timothy Pouliot. According to reports, Pouliot was drinking with friends in Manchester when one of the group members got too close to a woman who was out with another group. Witnesses later told police that Pouliot was overheard bragging about being a professional fighter and saying he could knock out a man from the other group. 22-year-old John DeLee with 1 punch. After learning about Pouliot's comments, DeLee flashed a gun that he was carrying. Later that night, the two groups got into a fight in the parking lot which did not initially directly involve Pouliot. They reconvened for a second brawl and DeLee shot Pouliot 9 times after being punched in the face. Pouliot died from his injuries and DeLee was charged with murder after telling police that he just reacted and asking if there was some legal defense to get him punched in the face. He was found guilty of second-degree murder following a trial in November of 2023 and is serving a 27-year prison sentence with the possibility of being paroled after 15 years if he stays out of trouble while behind bars. Number 8. David Wayne Stanley. Nicknamed the Playbook Pilferer, 58-year-old David Wayne Stanley was arrested by the FBI in late 2023 after robbing at least 4 banks over a 2-month period. He had already served 10 years in federal prison for a previous bank heist and was on supervised release when he robbed financial institutions in Texas and Georgia, where he earned his nickname for the Blue Playbook that he was known for stashing stolen money in before fleeing crime scenes. Following his arrest, Stanley's supervised release was revoked and he was charged for his latest batch of crimes. He pleaded guilty to bank robbery in June of 2024 and was sentenced to over 13 years in federal prison, along with a 1-year consecutive sentence for the revocation of his supervised release. There's no parole in the federal criminal justice system, which means that Stanley will have to serve most or all of his time behind bars, and his release will be followed by 3 years of probation. Number 7. Patryk Maka and Lauren Budreck. An off-duty Miami police officer was working off-duty at a nightclub in late March when a bystander alerted him to a woman being beaten with a belt in the parking lot. When he exited the building to investigate, he was met by 26-year-old Patryk Maka, who was walking toward the club with a belt around his neck. Maka was followed by 26-year-old Lauren Budreck, who reassured the cop that everything was okay. Unconvinced, the officer ordered Maka to sit on the curb, but he refused. Maka continued to resist and Budreck stepped in between the two men, further obstructing the officer's efforts to detain him. The officer tased Maka, but it had no effect, and the suspect allegedly tried to take the cop's taser while Budreck was accused of kicking the officer and hitting him in the head. Both suspects fled the scene and were located nearby a short while later. Maka was charged with aggravated battery, battery of a police officer, resisting and using a weapon against law enforcement, while Budreck faced 1 count of battery on a police officer. Records show that both defendants avoided prison time and are on probation after being granted withheld adjudication. Number 6. Mark Randolph Brown. In early October, 68-year-old accused killer Mark Randolph Brown was apprehended by Volusia County Sheriff's deputies at a residence in DeLee, Florida. He's facing a capital murder charge for the death of 69-year-old Mona Sloop, who was fatally shot at her home in Searcy County, Arkansas in July. Law enforcement officers took Brown into custody during a traffic stop, ending a prolonged multi-state, multi-agency search for the wanted fugitive. Brown surrendered without incident, but could be heard complaining in body cam video about the handcuffs hurting his wrists. He has several prior run-ins with the criminal justice system, including previous convictions for grand theft, misdemeanor battery, drug possession, and being a felon in possession of a firearm. Following his arrest, Brown was booked into the Volusia County Jail without bond. He no longer appears to be in custody, indicating that he has most likely been extradited to Arkansas to face justice for the capital murder case. Number 5. Alyssia, Razo, and Zadok Westfield. Beachgoers in Naples, Florida were trying to enjoy the Memorial Day holiday in late May of 2024 when they saw a couple being intimate on a pier behind a locked gate and a no trespassing sign. An officer was called to the scene where he found 20-year-old Alyssia Razo and 23-year-old Zadok Westfield in a compromising position. He warned Razo not to jump into the water while he took the pair into custody, but she did it anyway and began swimming toward the beach. The young woman's attempt to evade law enforcement was foiled by officers who met her along the shoreline as she approached dry land. Westfield cooperated with the arresting officer at the pier and told him that he and Razo had swam to the pier and climbed onto it with plans to jump off, but they got frisky instead, leading to the inappropriate situation that they were caught in. Both Westfield and Razo were charged with trespassing and breach of peace, and Razo is facing an additional charge of resisting an officer without violence. Both suspects were released after posting bail, but updates have not been forthcoming, leaving the current status of the case unclear. Number 4. Thomas Devaney Lane. In April of 2019, a 61-year-old Florida man named Thomas Devaney Lane was arrested in Brevard County for a bizarre tirade involving a threat to destroy everyone with an army of turtles. Police confronted Lane after receiving 7 911 calls about Lane's behavior in at least 3 separate locations. The suspect had even entered a police station at one point where he banged on the glass and yelled at a dispatcher before leaving and going to a nearby 7-Eleven where he called 911 and threatened the operator. According to reports, officers arrived to find Lane sitting in his car. He refused to exit the vehicle and continued shouting obscenities and calling himself a saint, while repeating his turtle army threat and stating that they would all see what would happen in an hour. Officers forcibly removed him from his car and booked him into the Brevard County Jail on suspicion of breaching the peace, misusing 911, and resisting an officer without violence. The outcome of the case is unclear. Number 3. Rebecca Johnson. Repeat offender Rebecca Johnson managed to avoid prison even after a deadly drunk driving wreck, and despite being in and out of Kentucky courtrooms over a 15-year period. She was driving more than 100 miles per hour while intoxicated behind the wheel when she crashed and killed 2 teenage boys in 2006. The judge allowed Johnson to continue walking free despite the wishes of the victims' families, even as she continued to reoffend. Over the years, she racked up numerous convictions for felony drug and weapon-related crimes. During that time, the mother of one of her DUI crash victims attended every one of Johnson's court hearings in hopes that she would finally be put behind bars. During the summer of 2021, prosecutors moved to revoke Johnson's probation after she walked away from a court-mandated substance abuse treatment facility and used someone else's urine for a drug test. The judge had warned Johnson that she would go to prison for violating, and she kept her word by sentencing the defendant to 5 years in prison. Johnson tried to mitigate her consequences, arguing through her defense attorney that her behavior resulted from a traumatic brain injury, but the judge took no mercy, calling the habitual offender a danger to the community and a danger to herself while handing down the 5-year term. Today's topic was requested by Nanya Business 9441 and Devlin 76. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Armond Langford. A Kentucky mother faced a terrifying reality in August of this year when she was kidnapped at knife point with her children in her vehicle. The suspect, who was later identified as 32-year-old repeat offender Armond Langford, used the victims to rob a bank before making off with an unknown amount of cash. Just a year earlier, Langford had been granted shock probation after serving just months of a 14-year prison sentence for robbing at least a dozen people at ATMs across Louisville. The shockingly lenient sentence came following Langford's conviction for first-degree burglary, fleeing, and evading the police, and 19 counts of second-degree robbery. He now faces 2 counts of kidnapping, 5 counts of first-degree robbery, and 1 count each of first-degree assault, first-degree burglary, fleeing or evading, and wanton endangerment. If convicted as charged and deemed a persistent offender by a jury, he could face a maximum sentence of life in prison. According to the most recent available update on the case, Langford has been ordered to undergo a mental evaluation, which could delay the proceedings indefinitely depending on the findings. Number 1. Social media prank leads to burglary charges. What was supposedly meant to be a fun social media prank took a serious turn for 2 Miami teenagers who were arrested in July for felony burglary after kicking in a resident's front door. Known as the door kicking challenge, the social media trend is exactly what it sounds like. Surveillance footage showed the 2 youths repeatedly kicking the door until it opened, and they were both apprehended later that evening. One of the suspects was found hiding in her attic after her infuriated mother gave deputies permission to search the family's residence. Both teens reportedly told police that they were just being stupid, but the thrill-seeking antic was no joke for law enforcement officials, who warned the public that the door-kicking challenge is a surefire way to get locked up with a felony, or even worse, shot and killed by a homeowner. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out www.theywillkillyou.com for all of your latest bad news.